So at the time that I'm recording this, I'm about 15 or so chapters into my reading of the original Angel of the Bat, which I'm also going to publish to Halfway Beret, just because, I don't know, I've been having a lot of fun doing these lately. And this story is just a quick little something I wrote the other day. So to give it like just a tiny little explanation to it, in the original Angel of the Bat, that again I'm going to be doing a reading for soon, there's a scene in which I implied that there was a this kind of this comic book scene from some Batman story that no reader has ever seen before. They did not DC did not write this scene. I wrote this scene, all that business, but I wanted to write it as if it could comfortably fit into the continuity of like old post-crisis Batman, and now that the now that New 52 has been undone and all that business, something that could comfortably sit, this flashback, which could comfortably sit in Batman continuity. Um, uh, so that's kind of what this is about. It concerns the kind of atrocious death of the character Stephanie Brown in the story War Games. Stephanie Brown is my favorite comic book character of all time, and I really love. There's a lot about her character I really adore, and I really like that. I'm drawn to the fact that she's Batman's, quote unquote, worst sidekick, as it were, and that she always felt like she had something to prove and all that business. And she suffered a really unfair kind of mean spirited demise back in the early 2000s before it was retconned to go away. And there was always this feeling of this should have been addressed more or better, or if it had to happen at all, this should have played out differently. So this is a short scene that I wrote that, again, I allude to it at one point in the original Angel of the Bat. Eventually, you'll hear about it there too. But this was just something written to be like, here's a little fill in the gap moment. Here's a little something about, why we feel that Stephanie got cheated. Here's a little bit more justification in universe for how her character is perceived and all that business. So, that's what this is. I hope you enjoy. Memorials Are for the Living, a fanfic one-shot written and read by MJTR. Cassandra, you're excused for the evening. Tim, I'd like a word. Tim Drake tensed as he turned to the figure seated at the bat computer. Bruce's cape and cowl were already stripped off, which indicated the night was at an end, but he still wanted something? Cassandra gave him a gentle bump in the arm, and he looked toward her. With the rest of her body covered in black, all he could read was a slightly sympathetic look in her eyes. He whispered, "Thanks, Cass," before he said, "Coming." Bruce didn't turn from his work as his sidekick approached. He kept typing for a few seconds and only paused to sip from a coffee cup at one point. With a growing pit in his stomach, Tim asked, "Bruce? I'm sorry, but my dad and Dana, I'm sorry." His mentor's face remained stony, though an edge crept into his voice. Tim had never heard Bruce sound embarrassed, but maybe that's what he'd sound like if the effect slipped into him. "I want to preface by saying we don't need to talk about this right now, if you're not comfortable. We can come back to it." Tired, and still not relieved of the pressure, Tim cleared his throat. "Come back to what?" Bruce waited a few more seconds, as if he struggled with how to proceed. At last, however, still without looking to Tim directly, he said, "It's been a few weeks now. I know we owe Stephanie a memorial." Tim's heart and stomach sank, and tiny trembles ran through his body. He didn't want this, not now. His time in uniform, fighting bad guys, this was supposed to be a distraction. Dick was busy with the Titans when we lost Jason. I didn't consult him much on how we should go about it, but I wanted you and Cassandra to have the chance to. As hard as he tried to look away, Bruce saw the way Tim shook in a reflection in the monitor. He turned his chair around. "Tim? You were right. I don't want to talk about this right now." Bruce nodded slowly. "It's all right. We don't have to." After silence settled between them, he added, "She was one of us, just like Jason." Tim's response came out like a croak. "Then why didn't you ever treat her like one?" Again, a newly unstable silence took them. Bruce knew the quiet was going too long, but when he tried to speak up, he only got as far as, "Tim." "All she ever wanted to be was one of us." Tim's eyes started to redden. "She turned her back on her own family to do it. You never asked any of the rest of us for that." "I know she did." "If she was one of us, why'd you fire her?" His voice shook. "I've screwed up. Dick told me he's screwed up. Jason, we're not talking about you three." A firm edge took Bruce's voice. "You said you didn't want to talk about this tonight. Fine. We don't have to. Maybe if she thought she was one of us, she wouldn't have tried that Matches Malone thing." Tim's voice grew both loud and unstable. "I didn't tell her to do it. No? But you made it pretty damn clear she couldn't come to you for support. That she wasn't good enough for that." Tim furiously wiped at his eyes and struggled for half a minute for anything more to say. Eventually, with his voice only slightly stabilized, he said, "Maybe she really wasn't one of us. Because every great thing she did was in spite of you, not because of you." Almost as soon as he'd said it, Tim's body clenched and he braced himself. He'd taken this too far. Bruce was surely about to snap at him, surely ready with 1,000 reasons he was wrong, surely. He felt a hand on his shoulder, followed by a gentle squeeze. Tim looked up at his mentor with watery eyes, and Bruce squeezed the shoulder again. "We're both exhausted. We don't need to do this right now," Bruce said. "Why don't you take a few nights off? Be with Jack and Dana." Tim broke their eye contact and looked away. "I just started wearing the uniform again. Are you trying to shuffle me away too?" "No, Tim. I'm trying to allow you space to grieve. I've seen you throwing yourself into your work again. You interceded when I needed it. Maybe it's time I do the same." His sidekick continued to struggle to undo the knot in his throat. He felt guilty, but wasn't sure if he should take back what he'd said. "Bruce, go rest, Tim. That's an order." Bruce turned back to the computer, as if to signal the conversation was finished. Tim considered pushing back more. It felt like there was more he could say. More anger he could turn loose. Some better expression of his pain. Something. Even if he wasn't sure what. Eventually, he just asked, "When should I come back?" 5 days. Call me if you need more." Bruce watched as Tim departed without another word. As he left the Batcave, Bruce entered a few commands into his computer, and a projection of Alfred's face appeared on the screen. "We're going to wait on the tribute to Stephanie." His butler raised an eyebrow. "I assume Master Timothy didn't take it well? Now's not the time. Memorials are for the living. And right now it would only bring him more pain." Alfred considered this for a moment before he asked, "And that suspicion you had? Now's not the time for that either." "I want to be wrong about this, Alfred. I want to believe Leslie deceived me for some reason. But I'm just not convinced yet, and I don't want to give him false hope." "I think that would be for the best, sir." Bruce mulled over all that he considered, both his theories and Tim's outburst. "Everything great she ever did was in spite of you." A young woman who forged her own destiny came to him with extraordinary resolve, and now she was gone. Maybe she wouldn't be if he'd only given her more of the support she deserved. Someday, in whatever small or great way he was able, he needed to make this right.